In just a moment, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts for today on this Wednesday evening. But before I do, I want to read one of my favorite passages from the old German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer in his book, Life Together. Let me read. Let him who cannot be alone beware of community. He will only do harm to himself and the community. Alone, you stood before God when he called you. Alone, you had to answer that call. Alone, you have to struggle and pray. And alone, you will die and give an account to God. You cannot escape from yourself, for God has singled you out. You cannot escape from yourself. God has singled you out. If you refuse to be alone, you are rejecting Christ's call on your life, his call to you. And you can have no part in the community of those who are the called. But the reverse is also true. Let him who is not in community beware of being alone. Into the community you were called, and the call was not meant for you alone. In the community of the called, you bear your cross. You struggle. You pray. You are not alone, even in death. And on the last day, you will be only one member of a great congregation of Jesus Christ. If you scorn the fellowship of the brethren, you reject the call of Jesus Christ. And thus your solitude can only be hurtful to you. Hello, church family. I've come to share again on a Wednesday evening, and I want to tell you a story that this week, a story that is fairly uncomfortable for me. Like one of my heroes fell. Happened back a long time ago now. I was a much younger pastor. Now, I've got gray hair and I'm a senior statesman, or at least I'm a senior at the churches. But at that time, I was a younger pastor, and many of the church leaders, probably most of the church leaders, were older than I was, and I looked up to them, respected them, and at that time in history, several things were going on in the church. Our churches, in my denomination, had midweek prayer meetings, Bible studies, and group meetings where we would share back and forth with each other. I was a part of an organization called Walk to Emmaus. And in Walk to Emmaus, we had reunion groups. And those reunion groups would get together regularly. They'd be small groups of people, and they would just ask each other tough questions about their spiritual lives, where they were tempted, where they were shining for God, and where they thought they let God down. I was also a part of a group called Promise Keepers. Across the country, a large group of men, and we would get together in small groups. And so I kind of thought that was the way we ought to do things. It seemed natural to me. And so I tried to push my church, or some of the leaders in the church, Sunday school teachers, age level directors, the leadership of the church. I wanted us to do more than just token Bible studies, the kind like you open up your Bible and they ask a question, who was going where and why were they going, and everybody already knows the answer before you start. And I wanted to kind of shy away from that. I wanted to get to the nitty gritty of life, and it was a popular thing to do back then. And I wanted us to share with each other where the rubber hit the road and we were serving the Lord, where we needed prayer, where we needed some comfort, where we needed some encouragement, where we needed a kick in the seat of the pants every once in a while. just like people, Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And I wanted to be sharpened, and I wanted to be in a group that would help me be sharp as I served the Lord. So I got together with some of the leaders of our church, and some of them were very resistant to sharing their faith, and I didn't know how far to push. I felt a little uncomfortable. Some of them were pretty open about it. They were just honest as anything, and others, it was a very private matter for them, and I didn't want to invade their privacy. And on one particular day, one of the leaders of our church just sort of, I guess, had enough of me. and they just said, and I still remember this with some sadness, that they said, I don't need this kind of thing. Everything I needed to know about God, I knew by the time I was 12 or a teenager. And I haven't learned anything since then. I haven't changed anything since then. What was good for me then is good for me now, and I don't need this. That made me sad. Because one thing I have learned over the years, and I've shared it on Wednesday nights, is that we never arrive. We always are in growth. And that statement shows a certain lack of growth. So I wrote down in my notes, I've got my notebook over here, and I write these little notes to myself, and a Proverbs for pastor, and I wrote, ask the tough questions. Ask the tough questions of everyone. And I would go around to people, and it probably made people mad at me sometimes. And I'd ask, how's your faith? How are you growing? What are you learning about the Lord? And I would ask my Sunday school teachers and my youth workers. And I remember one of them said, Pastor, my personal life my spiritual life is my own personal business. It's not any of your business. And if you keep asking me about my faith, I'm going to quit teaching. I thought to myself, maybe they should. I still feel this today. The other side of that coin is, I remember as a young pastor having some questions about what it was like to grow older as a Christian, and I went to an older, respected pastor in my conference that I was a part of. He had been a conference leader for many years, and I went to him and I asked him some very personal questions. And he was just an open book. Yep, Rob, this is where I'm strong. This is where I'm weak. This is how I did this. And I thought, this is what I want to be. Well, I know that I'm touching on some tough areas here. And tonight, a little bit touchy. And I know that there are a lot of people that listen to these videos. And they're not all from my church. And they're not all from inside of my state of Illinois. And I know that as the time goes on, it seems like more and more of you are starting to watch these videos. And I know I may be stepping in your toes, but let me say that one thing I've learned is, if you are a Christian, you are always in growth. And you always need to grow. Now, there goes my cough. Now, I often say that this is not a Bible study. And I often say this isn't really a lot of theology. It's just, it's areas that I've learned to grow in. But I do want to say something this time. This is theology. You can go through the pages of the Bible. You can go from the Old Testament clear into the New Testament. You can look at Jesus sending the disciples out 2 by 2. You can go through the book of Acts and watch how the disciples would challenge each other and sometimes call each other accountable for things. You can see how Barnabas went ahead and took John Mark Even when Paul didn't want to and they had a disagreement, you can see where Paul challenged Peter. And you can see all the way through the pages of the Bible that these were not loners. And if there's one thing that I have learned to become more and more and more aware about it, is that my spiritual life, while parts of it are private and intimate, maybe I should say intimate, my spiritual life is your business. And if you are a Christian, your spiritual life is my business. Now, it's an American cultural thing to be independent, and I understand that. And I've spent most of my life in the Midwest in farming communities, and farmers, we tend to be a rather independent sort of person too. And I listen to the politics, and a lot of the politics are, we're getting into an election year, and a lot of the squabbling's over independence. Who has the right to tell me what I can and what I can't do? But Christianity, while it is very personal, it is also very communal. We've said this before. And you and I need each other. There should never be a time when you are so sealed off in your faith, or I am so sealed off in my faith, that we are insulted if somebody asks us how we're doing. I don't know how to go much farther. I know this is a personal area that would upset a lot of people. Through the years, sometimes the people that I've seen that have been the most closed off are people that at one time in their lives had a vibrant type of faith that became kind of a reclusive spiritually until their faith was an echo. Now, I don't want to be a 63-year-old man with a 12-year-old faith. So, ask me whatever you want. I'll try my best to answer. And ask each other how we're doing. And pray for each other. And challenge each other in Christian love. Because as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And you and I, in the culture we live in, need to be as sharp for Christ as we can, and we need each other. And I guess that's about all I got to say about that.